Do you wish there was a cheaper or even free way of making things like miniatures or terrain? I sure did, and ever since I was a kid and I started this hobby with a very limited budget, I discovered a bunch of hacks which helped me make all sorts of cool things for free. And today I'll be sharing 5 of the most useful hacks with you. Hack number 1. Do you feel like it's hard to start working on a hobby project because it feels like you just can't afford any of these fancy or expensive model kits? Well, I'm here to tell you that this doesn't have to be the case. You can use anything, literally anything, to make something cool. In the past, I've used everything from empty soda cans to toilet paper rolls to make some awesome stuff. Like this wizard's tower, for example. You just have to use your imagination. Be creative. You could even use something like this teapot, for example. Don't believe me? Keep watching and I'll show you how I turned this teapot into some awesome fantasy terrain. Hack number 2. Have you ever had this problem? You try to glue something together with super glue, but it either doesn't set as quick as you want, it isn't quite strong enough, or the glue can't quite fill the gaps between the parts you're trying to glue together, and it just becomes this big mess. Well, there is one thing you probably already have at home, and which I've used a lot and I've seen a lot of other people use as well with great success. And it's baking soda. If you sprinkle some baking soda over super glue, it sets almost instantly. Or you can put it down first and apply some super glue over it. Or you can apply some super glue to one part and some baking soda in the other part and just put them together. Not only that, it also fills gaps if you use the baking soda, and it can be sanded down. It also makes the connection super strong, way stronger than just super glue on its own. I use this hack all the time and I think it's super useful. Be sure to give it a try. I store some baking soda in a small container on my desk for easy access. Hack number 3. Finding free stuff which is actually useful for your hobby can be quite difficult at times, especially if you want it to work at a small scale. But there's one thing I found that can be super helpful. Next time you're at a restaurant or coffee shop, ask for or just take a few extra wooden coffee stirrers, straws or chopsticks to take home. Coffee stirrers can be used as wooden planks, straws as pipes and chopsticks as thick wooden beams. If you do decide to use chopsticks or coffee stirrers, it can be nice to scuff them up a little bit. Scratch them up a little and cut out some chunks. I always try to cut some of the sides and the faces. This breaks up the perfectly straight shapes, which really helps to sell the look. This way it doesn't look like you just glued some coffee stirrers to your model, and more like an actual scale appropriate wooden plank. Same goes for the chopsticks. Hack number 4. Do you struggle to make your terrain or miniatures look more complete or finished? Well, an easy fix is adding texture to your bases or terrain pieces. This can really level them up. To do this, you can simply use sand. And I'm not saying you should go out and buy sand, because there's a great way to get sand for free. If you live near a playground, a beach, or any other place that has sand really, just fill a small container with it and take it home. But don't immediately use it. There might still be some nasty stuff in there. So I recommend you put it in the oven on a low temperature for a few minutes to kill any germs or organic matter. After it's cooled off, you can use a sieve to separate the smaller and bigger sand grains and store them in different containers. I use 2 different sieves to get 3 different grain sizes, but this is completely optional. You can also just not use a sieve at all. Hack number 5. Sometimes you want to add a more organic look to something, and flocking is a great way to do this. But flocking tends to be quite expensive, especially if you want to use a lot of it on a big terrain piece. However, I ran into this amazing video by Trent over at Miscast about making your own flocking. What I do is I get some sawdust. Then I separate it into 2 or 3 different batches. I put just a little bit of paint into each one of them until I get the color I want. And you just keep mixing and mixing until the color is consistent. You don't need to use any expensive paints for this. Just make sure you add a little bit of paint at a time. I usually make one batch with a darker color, one with a lighter color, and one with more of a mid-tone color. After that, I mix the batches together. This creates a nice contrast. You don't need to wait for this to dry, but you can dry it in the oven at a very low temperature if you want. Once it is dry, you can use a sieve to break up the bigger chunks. And you might be wondering, where do I get some sawdust? Well, if you don't have any, you can go to a hardware store where they sell lumber. Usually they'll have a service to cut lumber to size for customers, and they'll have big bags of sawdust laying around from the machinery they use. If you ask kindly, they'll probably give it to you for free. Or just ask any of your friends that own any woodworking tools, and they can probably save some sawdust for you. And after a quick and simple paint job, this is the final result. Using the tips I showed you, I was able to make this nice fantasy building. Hopefully this has inspired you to do something similar. If you want even more useful hobby hacks for hobbyists on a budget, check out this video. It has even more amazing tips you won't want to miss.